So noting that it's 7:01 on May 4th, 2022, I'll ask if we can call the Board of Health meeting to order, or I will call it to order, and then we'll have just a roll call of who is here. Give everyone a chance to announce themselves. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Lisa present.
Rebecca Honeywell present.
Natalie present.
Okay. So we have two variance hearings this evening and then a number of other topics for discussion, but nothing scheduled. So we'll take it in the order as best possible according to who's here and what interests may be. However, there are several items to announce for possibly adding to the agenda as they were not anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and we can vote whether to amend the agenda. So one is we have a new disposal works installer permit application that was received. We have another Visiting Nurse Association invoice that was received, and fortunately I caught it today in my old town email, or email I used for the town, a request for a letter of support from the sustainability coordinator. But I think everybody else got that through their Sherborn MA. So hopefully you saw it before I did and had a chance to review it. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to consider adding?
Hey, wait, Daryl, can you just clarify? I thought that they said that needed to go today.
Yeah,
The-
9 p.m.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure how that's going to happen. Oh, if we finish early, I do.
Whatever. I mean, it was sent very late, so
Right.
I think we should be able to finish by 8:45 for the good of the environment, for the universe, for all of us. So,
Well, this will be a good motivation for that. So,
perfect.
all right. So do we have a motion to add 1 to 3 of those, 0 to 3 of those items?
So moved.
Seconded.
Is that for adding all 3, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
And seconded for all 3.
Okay. Voting, Matt, start with you.
All right. I always forget. Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, aye. All right, so why don't we, well, let's do the COVID update because there may be people here for that. Is that okay with you, Matt? Because
Sure.
it falls
Yep.
on your shoulders usually.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've not done a recent data refresh, but hope to get one out either later this week or early next week as time allows. We see kind of overall case rates nationally are steady, a little bit higher in the Northeast, gradual uptick overall. We are seeing a lower percentage of patients who are hospitalized in the ICU, and the sort of general impression is that there is a mix of sort of primary COVID and incidental COVID, where patients are admitted for another reason, which appears to make up the preponderance of cases. I have not looked at the wastewater data in a couple of days. It had been uptrending and then was downtrending and then was steady to maybe uptrending. So I think we're in a relatively steady state with sort of ample access to Paxlovid. I think there's some additional programs that are being set up through the state to improve access for folks using telemedicine approaches. So I think we'll continue to see transmission in the setting of Omicron being quite transmissible, but the current level of social behaviors doesn't appear to be driving a sustained spike in cases, with the caveat that since we're not looking at antigen testing, which is increasingly a part of how people are getting tested, the reported cases may well be an underestimate to some extent, but at least appear to be relatively steady, though elevated.
Okay, and Ellen, would you like to add a little comment? Just, we've been seeing quite a few cases in Sherborn in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, just that there's been more than there's a definite increase. It had been much lower, and then suddenly it was like at least 2 cases a day. But
So I will rerun the local data and try to get that out to everybody later this week to help look at that. I've not looked at the Sherborn specific data in a while. I did look at the schools dashboard, which showed a pretty modest bump after the April vacation, which I think was encouraging, but I'm happy to put that together and distribute it to folks.
Mhm. Right, I think, Ellen, if I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I thought over about a 4-day period, we had 13 cases.
yeah,
That was a
it was over-
particularly big
yeah.
window, but
Yeah, over a period of 6 days, there were 13 or 15 cases, I don't remember. And it seems to have, there might have been one a day for a couple days. I did not check today, so I don't know if any more have come in.
all right. Sorry, I'm admitting, folks. All right. Anything else on COVID, or does anyone who's attending have any comments or questions? No? Okay. If you think of something later, could always circle back. I will give a really quick well update for Mass DEP. I had a very long conversation with someone who was extremely helpful at DEP. So we did go beyond the topics that I initially called for, but it was all detailed technical data, very, very nice to receive. I was calling because we had the question about the static well level that was found at on Farm Road in one of the wells where the static water level was above bedrock. And so then the question became, could that be indicating a leaky casing or something else? So basically the DEP well person's perspective is that that is not an uncommon phenomenon in Massachusetts, and that a significant percentage of wells, they observe that phenomenon. So that was one. It's not automatically cause for alarm in their opinion, but could warrant some further investigation, but that's usually chosen by the property owner, especially for a private well. They do rely heavily on the fact that drillers are licensed, and if they say that the casing has been secured into the bedrock, they are not necessarily questioning that, along the lines of how they use LSPs in the state to oversee remediation of contamination incidents. And the other main point is that they do not review all of the boring logs that they receive. They are filed and they're put into the database, but they're not necessarily doing special review of them.
That makes sense, I think. I mean,
So it goes back to, it's a good thing maybe for us to keep an eye on well logs when we have access to that, and to let a property owner know that they may want to investigate that further with scoping or some other means to identify whether there could be something that where the well is not sealed well enough through the overburden. But otherwise, there's not anything that Mass DEP does about this sort of situation. And if we wanted to, I guess we would have to write something into the regulation, which I've contemplated, and we could talk about that in the future.
yeah, I mean, there's lots of SOPs, Daryl, just about
Yeah.
how to properly seal wells and things that, you know, I'm sure if you ask me at a different time, I can send along. There's
Okay.
very, very standard SOPs for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
for
No,
rock-
and the well guidelines that the state has issued are good about that as well. So it might just be, well, anyway, that could be a discussion in the future about how we want, do we want to
Yeah.
do anything different about this?
Or just reference, you know, I think it's always safest to just reference the, you know, well installation information from DEP. And like that way, when it changes, we don't have to change anything in the regs. We can just, you know, provide the reference and the citation or something.
Mhm. Yep. Okay. And then, all right, let's go back up to this sustainability letter of support, since maybe sprinting for that at the end of this meeting. There is a prior letter that we provided for a very similar grant application. And unless anyone has any objections, all I was thinking is to add a little something about support for the importance of trees. I have to confess, I just saw that email shortly before this meeting. So I could see maybe adding a sentence in there about that to acknowledge it. And then I'd be happy to do that, assuming there's enough time after this. And
And there's
get it in
nothing-
if you want to support that.
Yeah, there's nothing object. I don't see, it was a little vague, if anything, but there was nothing in it that's I couldn't see all of us supporting. Like there was nothing controversial in there. So
Sounds
I
good to me.
I'd support it.
And I'll say the last version of that letter, they had provided a draft, but I had modified it according to Board of Health perspectives on some things. So hopefully those things still stand. So I don't have to rethink that. But, all right, if there are no other comment, well, do we have a motion? We could still have more comments. Do we have a motion to authorize me to resubmit a letter of support to the sustainability coordinator from the Board of Health?
Yep, I think we just need to update the title and the date, but given those updates, so moved.
And seconded.
Okay. Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, Matt.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I.
Errol, can you forward me that email? I don't think I ever received it.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't.
Well, yes, I will
What
do
you're
that.
talking about.
Yep. Okay.
Ellen, I'll forward it to you right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Excellent. And then I'll be sending you a letter soon. All right. How are we on time? Is there anyone who's here for a particular, oh wait, I don't think Mark has arrived yet. So we won't touch any of agent's business. Is there anyone who's here for, let me just scroll this up a bit. For any of the other issues that we've got here?
And
Otherwise-
Daryl, if I may, just so you know, I'm Mark on phone 11.
Oh,
as it
hi.
says.
Okay.
I am heading back to the computer, but I am on phone, and if you need me, I can mute back, shut the mute off.
Okay, we'll wait till you're at your computer to go in depth on some of the agent's business. So, all right, so shall we tackle the Library Arts and Crafts Fair one-day food establishment permit? And Ellen, have we received feedback from the food inspector on that? I know he's been working with them on it.
Yes, he did send me an email saying that he recommends approval of this permit and as a condition of its issuance, compliance with all applicable laws.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
So
So moved.
moved.
Oops. Seconded.
And I see that Sean, would you like to make a comment regarding this?
Simple question. Do you guys charge the fee or do you waive the fee for the library fair?
We charge, or it turns out to be a reduced fee. There's one, it's $150 for up to 6 food vendors.
Oh, because they're outside vendors. It's not, all right, so this isn't in the name of the library, friends of
Right,
the library.
right.
This is the vendors themselves.
Yeah, they all apply, but the library submits the coordinator's checklist. And I'm sure they collect the fees from the vendors, and we collect a reduced, what turns out to be a reduced fee for them.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, ready to vote.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Oops, sorry. Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Okay, so for CA Dows and Son, there's a seasonal food establishment permit. I'm presuming this is a renewal.
Yeah, it's a renewal. Just this year, like last year, instead of doing for their water test, instead of doing heterotrophic plate count, they submitted E. coli. And so Tom has recommended approval of this conditional to receipt of the heterotrophic plate count result that meets the regulations. And I talked to John Dowse. He is doing it. We just don't have it yet.
Okay. Just a side question, is Tom aware of the ETR issue?
I,
The labs?
I believe he is.
Okay,
We'll make sure he is if he isn't, I'll send him that information.
yeah, I don't know how much
But I-
people use them around here,
Yeah.
but that's
Although-
for
although-
everyone.
Yeah, for all the food establishments though, Mark reviews the water tests.
Oh, okay,
So Tom is just doing the actual food information.
okay. Yeah, I didn't know if they might ask him about labs, although if he pointed them to the
No,
DEP list.
Yeah, no,
Just as a reminder for everyone, ETR was decertified by Mass DEP, but apparently they're giving information to people that they're still okay to do testing, which is not quite right.
well, yeah, and for doses anyway, I mean, they had submitted their water tests for everything else, so they went to analytical balance. So I'm
Oh,
sure
okay.
they went back to them for the heterotrophic plate count.
And
Okay.
Daryl, if I may, there was one client that used ETR recently, and I asked them how they're presenting it, and he did say they're saying they're testing, but not for anyone that requires a certified lab. So that was relayed to
Oh,
me
all
at the
right.
beginning of this week. So that's what he
Okay.
said.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay, so do we have a motion
So
to
moved.
grant the permit with the condition?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. Okay, next we have ratification of an invoice that I had approved previously to ensure timely payment. And does anyone need to see that? I could bring it up if you'd
No.
like.
No, it seemed lovely and low.
Okay,
Agreed.
so would anyone like to make a motion to ratify that invoice approval?
So moved.
Seconded.
This is for March.
Yes, for the March invoice. And okay, any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. And let's go to the thing that we added. This is for, again, for the Visiting Nurse Association. So we have, for everybody else who may be on, we have a standard monthly rate that we pay, but COVID's been obviously consuming a lot more time. And so we've been paying additional for those hours using ARPA funds. So do we have a motion to approve payment of this invoice?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I.
And could I just say, Daryl, you had mentioned that we're using ARPA funds, but we did get a grant from the Mass Health Officer, from the DPH, which is funneled through Mass Health Officers Association for $8,502. And it can only be used for either COVID testing, COVID vaccinations, or case investigation and contact tracing. So that will, so far, it will pay all of the extra VNA COVID invoices so far in fiscal year 22.
That's great. And I would assume there's going to be something left over from that, possibly.
Well, it might be close.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you, Melon, for bringing that up. Let's go back up to the disposal works installer permit under the things to be added today for Robert Desprace of Westminster. And were you able to gather background information? Because I think this person is new for us.
Yes, he's new. He said he was currently licensed in 2 towns, Westminster and Sutton. Sutton did give a, the okay that he did a decent job for installations. Westminster, I called yesterday. They called back today, and Jean sent me an email that they recommended that he was only licensed with them 2 years ago and again this year, but that he took a very long time installing a system, but it could have been because he was new, but they recommended that we keep a close eye on him. But
And I'm back online here. I'm going to be online. I am online now, so I'm going to switch off the phone, but I would leave with the note that any new installer, I usually work very closely with them. And I'll be now joining you through my computer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so do we have a motion to, and I assume the rest of the application's in order and all set to go then?
yes. Yep.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve issuance of the permit?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I.
Do we think we can get the beaver permit in the 5 minutes before the variance hearing?
Yes, Matt, would you like to, Matt
please.
Beavers, would you like to talk about that?
As always. Although I'll be honest, I haven't seen the beaver permit, so maybe I shouldn't.
All right, then we will make Mark tell us about it.
Yeah.
And ratify.
I didn't think I was going to make it till today.
I hate to steal his, go ahead, Matt.
No, well, it looks like we have the usual Goulding in South Main. Looks like potential flooding of roadway. I bike there all the time. I appreciate there not being a flood, even though I hate the trapping of beavers. Seems fine to me.
Yeah, and you'll notice too, from South Main Street to the railroad tracks, most of those homes are built up a little bit because I looked at our mapping. A lot of that area is wetlands, which is conducive to and attracts beavers because now you have the water, you have the food, and that's what they're looking for. And the food being the bark and the trees themselves. So with that said, I hope I would support the beaver permit, but also with the notice that we really need to look at some type of beaver management for that area, in my view.
We discussed this in the past, and why don't we just look into management and then give the permit if we need it? rather than,
This is after the fact, right? So the permit's already been issued. We're just ratifying it.
Yes, that's correct. What happens is we can't have the road undermined while we're looking at, and I agree with Rebecca that we really need to send the message that they may need to look at, say, a water lowering control device through the culvert that crosses over on Goulding East before the railroad tracks. There's a lot of opportunity down there, and maybe down the road they'll look at that, because they will come back, and I don't think we can ever keep the beavers out of that area. They're just going to come back. It's a matter of controlling the water level so it doesn't affect. Right now, I didn't see any wells or septic systems that are in any concerning issue, and I see Sean raised his hand, but the road itself, I would not want to see that undermining because of the additional water that pools up near the roadway. And
I'll mention, I did go by there end of last week, I believe. And I think only once before have I seen the water as high as it was now. The beavers were quite industrious there, but it is the perfect spot, given that they keep going back there. It is the perfect spot for the beaver deceiver, where you let them build their beaver dam, but then you run a pipe that basically punctures through, and the inlet is far away from where their dam is, so they don't hear any flowing water, and then it comes out through the bottom of their dam, so it allows the water to keep going. They're happy they built the dam. The water doesn't get too high. It'd be a great application for that location. But Sean, I don't know who owns it, but go ahead, Rebecca.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we've talked about this off and on for several years, and I thought it would be interesting to find out what do we need, like what is missing for us to proceed with investigating what the different options are.
Rebecca, my recollection from the last time we had an extended discussion was I think you were going to follow it up.
I was?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So, because I think it's a topic that
I know.
you've been pretty consistently the person most
Yeah, I'm
interested in.
definitely interested in this, but I don't know, whatever. Sure, I'm happy to look into it. It's not my area of expertise at all. There are definitely areas that I definitely volunteer to do. I was curious from people like Mark, who is more knowledgeable about it, maybe Sean even. I'm just interested in, is it something that we should do, or is that something that Sean Colleen does on?
John's hand is raised, by the way.
Yes, we could let Sean talk, and
I'm just curious.
It depends on who the property owner is. So Sean, would you like to address this particular one? Or in general?
Yeah, it's actually on town property.
Okay.
And this is, we spend a lot of time and effort and frankly money doing exactly what you talked about. This is not in a typical fashion where it's blocking a culvert. There's actually an earthen dam there that was created. So it makes for very good beaver habitat, and it's a very easy dam for the beaver to build. So in the future, we once the water level goes down, and if maybe the groundwater goes down a little bit this year, which it didn't last year, we can look at that. We're going to have to look at that pretty extensively with Concom, because it's the earthen dam that makes it really easy to flood. Somebody did that probably 80 or 100 years ago on purpose, much like the Ash Lane Island that Mark knows well.
So
it's actually
Sean,
a hard place to put a beaver pipe in, but we're willing to look at it. Right now, we just
actually it's not a hard place to put it in. I could show you photos of a client's site. They had one installed. It was on a historic mill dam, kind of similar, and it works fine. I think it could work fine there. I mean, we could ask people who do it in all different situations, and they could give their opinion of it. But anyway,
So
at some
maybe,
point, as soon as I have a free moment, I'll show you photos.
Maybe what we should do is approve this permit because there was sort of
It's
an
done.
imminent issue to the roadway, and then strongly suggest that Sean investigate options going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I was wondering what is the normal procedure? Is it it comes to us when there's an emergency or when there's flooding, but it isn't really a Board of Health issue until that point. So I was just curious where it usually is done, and it's probably with Sean and Highway.
And
But I don't know. Maybe it's Conservation Commission. I have no idea.
No,
this is
that
really-
it has to come here first because we can't go manage the beaver while they're actively there.
Mhm.
So legally they have to be removed, and then we can handle it. And I mean, it's one of those, it has to become a problem before it is a problem. We chase these things all over town, and we have beaver deceivers and different things around town. This one, we never have. I suspect because private residents were probably hiring someone else to trap, but this one needs to be handled. And there is no option to, I can't breach the dam until we trap. So we're gonna get there, and then as quickly as I can, I'm gonna address exactly what you said, is see what the consultants can come up with for a pond leveler, or it's not really supposed to be a pond. It is a pond right now, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, and this is Ellen. Can I just clarify a couple things? It's called an emergency 10-day beaver permit, but that does not mean it's because there is an emergency situation. The word emergency is in there, and it means that permit is issued very quickly. And it's only valid for 10 days. We issued it yesterday, so that permit will expire on the 13th of May. And the other thing I just did want to say is I remember I was on the Conservation Commission program that they had, the Central Mass Mosquito Control District gave earlier. I think it was in February, it might have been in February. And towards the end of that, it was noted that the Central Mass Mosquito Control District will install beaver deceivers for free. And all you have to do is call them. And I wrote down the name of the person, but I don't have it right in front of me. But I'll provide that.
That could be
So
one.
I just want to be sensitive to time because we've got
Yeah,
a 7:30.
so let's
I would
circle
say-
back to this.
And
And
maybe we can
should be able
beaver-
to vote quickly, but
Can we plan to let's just vote on this permit, and
Okay.
then let's add a discussion of beaver management to the agenda for our next meeting.
okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Yes, although I
Yes.
think I'll call Sean about the opportunity that may exist within the 10 days to at least get a quick assessment and spend less money, not even pay. Definitely be saving money to maybe do the deceiver now.
The
But
permit
okay.
they have now is only to take the beavers. We're waiting for conservation. Once conservation issues their emergency certification, then Mark can sign the reverse side of the permit, which then allows the beaver deceiver. So we don't have that yet, and
Okay,
we're waiting for conservation.
And Ellen is correct. This is just to remove the beavers at the present time. And the rest of the work will have to come back as once we hear from conservation, if they are okay with the beaver deceiver and so forth, if that's the plan.
oh. So the application was only for removing, because there's an opportunity to write
But it's-
alternative strategies on there, but
no,
that's not on the application.
It is on the application, but the approval can only be for taking the beavers until we get the emergency certification from the Conservation Commission. Then the second signature allows that other work
That
to.
is correct.
Okay,
I never saw a beaver dam out there. I did see the water dropping off from one side to the other through the culvert, but Sean, if you know of a beaver dam out there, you can just make
yeah,
note
it's
of that.
huge.
Direct
Yeah,
us to
Mark,
that.
they sent you to the wrong place, Mark.
Oh, no wonder I didn't see it. Okay, thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
It's just upstream of Sewell Brook Road.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yes.
you. We'll work on that.
So it
Um,
is, it's flowing high under South Main, but it's not at the South Main culvert. There is a deceiver there.
Yeah, it's a
Thank you.
shame because the work, if the permit was written in a different way, it could be done where you wouldn't have to trap. Trapping just means killing, doesn't mean moving them, means killing them. That wouldn't have to be done, and you could remove the dam, install the deceiver, and everything moves on. But okay, so did we have a motion? I can't even remember anymore.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Becca Honeywell, I.
Matt Bataille, aye.
and Daryl, I. Okay, so noting that it is 7:37, we have a 7:30 appointment for, sorry, I took it away. For a septic replacement expansion at 97 Washington Street. I saw that, Dan, you're logged in, and Ellen, do we have all the green cards?
Yes, we do. They're all set.
Okay, and so there's a map. And Dan, would you like to address the
Sure, I'd be
site
happy to.
circumstances that are compelling the variance request?
For the record, Dan McIntyre representing the homeowner, Tom Trainer. This is an existing 3-bedroom home right about at the intersection of Washington Street and Russet Hill Road. As you can see from the map, it was built on a hillside. The home was up sort of at the top of the hill. The septic system was constructed down at the bottom of the hill, and the well up near the house. So really the location of the well dictated where we could replace the septic system. And the best spot was really to put it back where it is now. So that's what we chose to do. The tank will be up near the home where the existing tank is. We'll follow a pipe down the steep embankment and then into the leaching field area. Excuse me.
So safe to say it's a gravity feed?
It is.
I'm kidding.
So as I mentioned, it is a 3-bedroom home. The Trainers aren't planning on selling the home or putting on an addition at this time, but we thought it would be an opportune time to ask for the +1, since it is a fairly large lot and we can put in the system without any Title V waivers or Sherborn variances, with the exception of one that we just can't design around, and that would be the high groundwater table. So that is the one variance that we're asking for, that the groundwater table is less than 5 feet below grade. We are maintaining the full 5-foot offset to groundwater. And we're proposing to use an alternative technology system for a couple of reasons. One, it provides better treatment to the groundwater table because the soils here aren't that great. It's about a 30-minute perk rate. So it's not that not great for treating wastewater. So we thought we'd use an alternative technology to help us with that. And it also gives us the advantage of a smaller footprint. So less fill needs to be brought in, less tree disturbance in the area of the septic system. So with that, I can turn it over to questions.
Okay, again, I mean, an interesting, looks like a quite steep slope. Some wetlands nearby, so setback from wetlands in the well. And it appears that you are in the right area.
Yeah, we did stay outside the 100-foot buffer of conservation. They reviewed it. And we're maintaining the 125, we're actually exceeding the 125-foot offset of the Sherborn Board of Health regulations.
And just if I can add to, Dan is showing, if you look at the notes, he's showing a conventional system here as well. To the right of the leaching area, you'll see a 30 by 45 over excavation. I'm sorry, not there, but a conventional system is noted. Second note down on the right side of the leaching field.
Oh,
And
okay.
that is because they're planning to add or designing to add one additional bedroom. So using, I think the use of alternative systems here is a good move on the engineer's part to give it that extra opportunity to be environmentally sounder, I guess I'll say. But with that, because he's adding the additional bedroom, they do have to design both the conventional to show it can fit there if ever needed. But you can see from those shaded lines how much more space it would have taken up if he was using a conventional system. So in this case, he is correct in saying that the use of the land is conservative, and I thought it was a good compromise.
Okay, does anyone else on the board have comments or questions? And if not, are there any abutters or anyone else who has a question or comment? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to then the variance rather.
Yeah, singular.
Yes. So pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put a design around this one, so we asked for it.
Yes, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
And I'll say, so we rarely see it without 8.01.
I know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But good.
Yes. it is
Good weird. Good weird.
Okay, any other comments? All right, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. So I'll close the hearing. And are the plans ready for approval, Mark?
Yes, they are conditional to 2 deed recordings, one for the innovative alternative technology, and the other one is for the garbage grinder.
Okay, so do we have a motion with those 2 conditions?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. All right, so any other questions? And congratulations, Tom.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay,
Welcome.
let's see. Okay, we have a few minutes. Before our next variance hearing. Let's see, we did that. Okay, the Massachusetts Coastal Railroad yearly operational plan. Are we just noting receipt, Ellen? Or does anyone have any comments on that?
I would say,
Are we coastal because of beaver dams? What's the? It's just kind of a funny nomenclature.
I'm not sure. I know that there's been some transfer of ownership of the rail line running through Sherborn, but whether that has
Maybe
anything
it
to do
ends
with it.
up there or something. Yeah, it's just kind of funny that. Yeah. So is a vegetation control, does it involve the use of herbicides or is it just that they pull things? Like what is entailed with that?
I have to confess, I've not been able to spend time on reviewing that, researching that. Has anyone else had an opportunity? Oh, if not, Carol McGarry has her hand up and maybe she could shed some light.
I randomly happened to be dropping in on your meeting, and these do usually come before Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
Periodically, they come before us, and they do sometimes use herbicides, yes. But a lot of these things like the utilities and the railroad try to use herbicides that are more environmentally friendly.
Yeah. And I imagine they're using them typically in pretty like roadways and, where the stones and, it's not like pristine habitat or anything, right? Because it's where the rails are.
Well, okay, so obviously some of the rails may actually go through wetlands, and I can't remember specifically if they reduce their pesticide use when they do that. But they can't spray it outside of their own right of way anyway. So obviously on Concom, we worry about it drifting or getting into the water and drifting
Right.
and all of that. But I will say that that situation usually does come before Concom. I haven't seen this, but it might be on an upcoming agenda. So.
Well,
And
and I-
usually there are markers along the railroad to indicate when there are water bodies and they're supposed to stop some number of feet. Of course, it's going through where people have wells near them.
Yeah.
So I'm not keen on pesticides in the least. I don't know if anyone's ever witnessed the mechanical cutback of vegetation that they do. That's quite a sight. And when that comes through, and it just, there are things that are basically swinging on arms or on chains, I'm not sure which, and
Like-
knocking branches off of trees and that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So it's also quite disruptive.
Daryl, I noticed Courtney has her hand up and she's on
Yeah.
Concom, so she might also have some more specific memory of this.
I
So
think-
Courtney, would you
I
like to?
think, yeah, I think Carol got most of it. And I remember the last time this came before the commission. I don't know if it was an agent or an interim agent or who, but somebody actually went on the rails with the guys to confirm all of the on and off points for the sprayer
Oh,
for
okay.
those like wetland areas. But like you said, Daryl, it's like they go through people's backyards and they just spray all along the tracks. I mean, they go the tracks go through your neck of the woods too. So
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, I guess if they could just, obviously, we want them to minimize the use of any introduction of chemical herbicides or pests. I imagine it's primarily herbicides that they're using.
Yeah, it's herbicides.
Yeah. So if they could just minimize that and, obviously take care to stay away from, like you just said, the water bodies. And I don't know, do they have like, Daryl, is it, or maybe this is Tom's still on? Yeah, he is. Is there like a map that shows people's wells that are in proximity to rail so that they maybe be mindful of that? Or is that just something that they're not going to care about?
I haven't looked
I don't-
closely at them for years. I used to, when I was on the Groundwater Protection Committee, go over them in much more detail.
I don't know, Tom, is that
I think the
something-
public water supplies would show up, but I don't think private wells. But Tom, do you have knowledge of the
No,
latest?
we
Well,
have to. We
Well,
have to.
actually, as we speak, we're working on it.
Perfect.
Thankfully to the ARPA grant we got a couple of months ago, our college intern is now, as best we have from limited, sometimes records of wells, resident wells in town, we are mapping them and looking for just the type of questions you're asking about proximity to different sources. So that's an ongoing 2-year project.
So
Okay.
maybe this is another criteria to have is wells near the railroad tracks, as a target property.
Yeah, I mean,
Search.
Yeah, I mean, he's trying to put it all of them, right, Tom? I mean, that's like the big picture is to get all of them to the extent
That-
feasible.
That's correct. And our biggest limitation is so far, and we've only gone through about 100 files in the past month, less than half of them have any well information.
Yeah,
So it's it'll be a subset of the 1,500 homes in town.
yeah. Okay, well, that's all good progress, though, good things to be doing. And, we'll just, I guess when they come before you guys, Courtney and Carol, obviously just reemphasize to minimize it to the extent feasible. But they're easements and, they also have safe passage. So I know we can't actually.
There's nothing much we can do.
Exactly. We
Right.
can just be, urging them. to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 7:50. 51, and we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 9 Kendall Ave. And Ellen, are the green cards all in?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And Mark, do you see the Civilized Solutions? So who do we, oh, hi, Paul, are you the presenter for this today?
I am, yes. Thank
That
you.
is correct.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. For the record, Paul Saulnier, Civilized Solutions, representing the owner of 9 Kendall Avenue. This is an existing 3-bedroom septic system. Basically, it was a cesspool. The well, as you can see, is down on the east side of the property. The entire east side of the property is lined with wetlands. So our goal here was to try and stay away as far as we could from the wetlands without intruding. So we did a series of test pits. Unfortunately, we hit refusal in test pit number 4. Otherwise, it would have been a long, skinny system. But test pits 1 and 2 were adequate for the system. So we have 3 rows of Elgin in drains and an alternative system. We do maintain more than the adequate separation from the well, but we are within the buffer, the 100-foot buffer of the wetlands. So the project has been before the Conservation Commission, and they have approved it under an RDA. So basically, we're, again, no increase in flow. We're sticking with the 3-bedroom system. We did go with an alternative system, the Elgin in drains, which allowed us to go under the state regs 2 feet to groundwater instead of 4. And in this case, eliminated the need for a pump and a retaining wall, other than a small impervious barrier that will be below grade. So that also reduces the amount of impact in the wetlands. But as a result of soil conditions, we do have a series, unfortunately, of variances, including the dreaded 8.0.1, which Dan managed to avoid in his last presentation, as well as 8.02 and section 10.2, and then one from Title V regulations under 15.405.1H for to allow reduction in the separation of 4 feet to 2 feet with no increase in flow and no increase in design flow and no reduction in setbacks from private wells. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, and Mark, do you have any particular comments on this before we ask questions?
There is a stockpile area for the soil. That's at the beginning of the property. I showed through conservation measures. And they do have some conservation measures that will need to go into place as well. The other note is that they did hit refusal on one of the test holes down away from the system, but there are 3 deep holes. That one right there, Darryl, that's deep hole 4. The other 3 did not have refusal. The system is going in an area where there was no refusal, between 1 and 2, deep hole 1 and 2. And the perks passed. They are planning to just put in a replacement system for the existing house. It's noted as a 3-bedroom. They're not asking for any additional bedrooms. And the well has been changed to not include water to the property across the street. So now that well is only providing water to this property, 9 Kendall. So there has already been some improvements to the property, and this will be a need for a garbage grinder deed recording. They did not design for one. And the other note will be if and when we get to that point, which will be soon, they are using IA technology, innovative alternative technology, which is the same technology you saw from the previous plan.
Okay, I have a question. So I know that when there's bedrock beneath the system, it's typical to add 1 foot. So would this refusal qualify for that, and therefore should be 3 feet?
They get down 10 feet on the other holes. So
okay.
And then test hole 3, which is near test hole 4 on the near that cedar tree, they get down to 102. And not for sure if that was refusal. The refusal was definitely in deep hole 4, but they did get 10 feet on both deep holes 1 and 2.
And I'd like to add, just to clarify, that was a good question, because sometimes, like if deep hole 4 has refusal and deep hole 1 is on the opposite side of the system, then we sort of draw a profile of ledge and determine whether or not there's any refusal within 6 feet under the system. But in this case, test pit number 2 is right at the edge of the system and went full depth, so that there's no indication of refusal within the system itself.
So it would help really guide the placement more than anything.
Correct.
Yeah.
In
So
fact,
that-
he's putting the system away from deep hole 4. He's
Yeah.
moving towards the other way.
And I mean, and just speaking from a lot of the investigation work I do, sometimes, especially, you know, with certain pieces of equipment, like if you like a geoprobe or something, you can hit something that seems like refusal, but it could actually just be tight till, you know, like it's not even necessarily bedrock or ledge. It can just be a finer grain, tighter material that, you know, just it's too tight and dense for the equipment to get through. So,
Yeah,
And that's
or
a good point.
even a large boulder.
yeah, it could be a cobble. Yeah, exactly.
You'll notice in Paul's deep hole logs, he does say boulder or ledge. You know, it's one or the other. So it could be a boulder.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions or comments? I'll note that given the proximity to the wetlands, I guess, I know that it's more expensive to have to build a retaining wall and that it might have lost the gravity feed, which we do consider important just for robustness, for power outages and general maintenance and upkeep. But having a little extra material in there, it is minimalist, and it is close to groundwater, as evidenced by the variances and by the wetlands so close.
Daryl, if I could address that, the Elgin in drains are considered secondary treatment. So in some ways, it's actually better than just having 4 feet to groundwater, because the Elgins are reduced suspended solids, and to some degree, even the nitrogen. So the state actually gives us full credit for that. So it's at least as good as the 4-foot separation to groundwater by utilizing these Elgin in drains. And unlike some of the other alternative technologies, the first one I installed was in 1995, and it's still working fine. So I don't think you should have to worry about quality of groundwater or impact on wetlands in this case with the use of the Elgin in drains.
No, they're okay, but they don't address all parameters, so it's not 100% treatment of everything, but that's okay.
Okay.
It's permitted by the state. Anyone else have questions, or are there any abutters to this property who have questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on, but if you think of a question, we can certainly address it as we go through the variance requests. Okay, so first up is, and I'm going to, not the dreaded, but our beloved section 8.01 and 8.02, which help us maintain our drinking water quality here in Sherborn. So do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
And Daryl, I. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
comments?
Mm.
Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
And Conservation Commission has reviewed this already, so we are following on their guidance. Any other comments? Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. And then for the Title V local upgrade approval, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 15.4051H?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? Okay, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. Okay, so we'll close the hearing. And are the plans ready for approval, Mark?
Yes, they are conditional to 2 deed recordings, one for the innovative alternative technology, and the other one is for the garbage grinder that's not being sized. The system's not being sized for a garbage grinder.
Okay, do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Seconded. I thought it was actually in the one of the other things we already moved. I think it was, but that's okay.
You thought which was in?
I thought
approval of the plan?
the garbage grinder prohibition was linked to one of the earlier variances.
It was mentioned in the first variance, and
Yeah, I just,
I'm just saying.
it says, and a garbage grinder is prohibited by the, okay.
Yeah, and they just need to do a deed recording is all. I was.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, all right, Matt,
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. Okay, so thank you. And Paul, do you or the property owner have any other questions?
I know we're fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate the attention and the questions, and have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh boy, oh boy. All right. Would you like to do other agents' business, Mark? Because I believe we have some folks here.
Yes, I was going to mention, I did see Brett in the audience, so I don't know who else might be here outside of that, but I don't know who got here first, if there's anyone here for 39 Nason Hill Road or not, but
39 here, David McLaren.
I don't know who was first. That's all I'm saying.
I suspect the soil testing will be quicker, so why don't we open with that one? For 58
Okay.
Oldfield.
All right. Mark, would you like to
Yes, so
introduce this?
yes, the owner's here, and I'm sure the board will allow her some opportunity if they have questions to answer. And the letter's pretty explanatory about the process that has occurred. We have seen this applicant in prior meetings. Unfortunately, their engineer did not apply for soil testing for new construction because they're adding a bedroom above and beyond the first bedroom. So this is a new construction request, and our new construction soil test season, you have to apply by April 1st to get into the testings part of our season. If not, then the season reopens in November. Unfortunately, the engineer did not apply in time to be in our soil test season for this past season in April, up to April, I should say. So they're requesting the board consider opening the season back up, but and I'll let the board decide, but I know if we do that for them, I've had a couple other people that have asked for the same thing and have been told no. So it kind of changes the playing field if we do it just for one, unfortunately.
Right,
And
I'd say
Mark-
I think the only time we've ever done it out of season is when it's an emergency repair, something's in failure. Is that correct, Mark?
Well, no, we would allow testing out of season if there was a failure.
No, that's what I mean. I think that's the.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Darryl, that is correct.
Okay.
So maybe another way to put it, Mark, in your recollection, have we ever done it for new construction before?
To my recollection, no, for the reason that if we did it for one, we'd have to do it for others. And I don't remember, to my recollection. I don't know if Ellen can remember any. I don't remember
Yeah,
any.
no, I agree. And I did explain that to the engineer when he came in and tried to, and wanted to apply. And he came in, it was about 2 weeks after the close of after the deadline, the application deadline. I did explain that, there were others that we had said no to, and we just can't allow it for him.
In terms of avoiding missing the next deadline for applying for testing, can someone submit an application now?
Yes, and I had told him that too, and we would just hold it until November. Although I did recommend he just come back in October so that it's not sitting on my desk for 4 or 5 months, but.
Okay, so does anyone else on the board have a comment?
So I think for me, I think the point Mark made is kind of the key piece. So I think this looks like it's section 5.1B in our regulations on page 6 and 7 that sort of lists it. And I think, if we have the regulation, I do think an exception when you're repairing a failed system makes sense. I don't, like, if we have the regulation and you don't adhere to it, then I don't know that it provides a benefit. I do think managing that season is important to make sure that the groundwater levels are accurate and it's sort of reliable testing. And so, again, I recognize that it can feel like, well, gosh, we're close, but we're sort of not in it, and adjudicating what is close enough to do it could vary by the year and could vary by a number of factors. And so that, at least for me, makes me uncomfortable doing a variance for that, for a new construction as opposed to a repair system. But I don't know where others are at.
No, I feel the same.
Yeah, I agree.
And then
Okay.
I see Sean's hand, but I thought I saw it before, but then I wasn't sure.
I don't think it went down. Sean, do you realize your hand's still up?
Yeah, I put it up because I can't, you guys disabled the chat. I had a comment when you're ready for public comments on
I
that.
think if you just click reactions, so if you click reactions.
No,
No,
I
think he
shut down the
My
chat.
hand's up
Lisa.
intentionally because you were
I think he
talking
wants
about
to say
something
something.
specific
Oh.
and I had a different answer than you all had.
Oh, okay.
All right. Why don't you make your comment?
Yeah, I tested out a season at 5200 Lane in a former life for the house I built. And I challenged the season and you guys accepted it. It was out of season and it was a failed system, but then it got built as a new system.
Yeah, but you had a system in failure. See, that's the trigger, Sean, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that we
It's
have
the new
definitely-
construction of a new dwelling, not the construction of a new system. That's the issue here.
And I think for us, Sean, I think the basis is then this is facilitating the replacement of a failed system, and that's okay, even if the system is a newly constructed one.
Well, it needed to be a newly constructed to be able to go from 3 to 5.
Again,
Is that,
right, there's no failed system here, I think is the issue.
Yeah, and so I think the key piece here, Sean, I think is that the trigger for the soil testing and the replacement was new construction, or excuse me, is a failed system, even though what you did would also constitute new construction. It sounds like you sort of have two pieces that were true. You had failed system, which also had new construction. But I don't know, for at least for me, that carries forward to something that's new construction, but no failed system. So I don't think this is trying to limit new construction, but rather to say the deviation from the testing schedule is based on the urgency of a failed system.
well, no, it was exactly opposite. The schedule wasn't going to allow me to build a new system, which wouldn't have allowed me to build a 5-bedroom system. So I
No, no,
challenge.
Maybe you
but-
told us about the desire to address the failed system first and then proceeded to a new system. I'd have to
And-
go back and look at the records, but
And there were no
that could be what
variants,
happened.
and there were no variances granted for the replacement, but it was for initially for the repair of, or a replacement of a failed system.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think it gets, Ellen's historic record is very strong.
Yes,
I
agreed.
think it starts getting a little fuzzy when people start trying to compare and contrast, different situations. But, I think we definitely always have empathy in these kind of situations. But like we were saying, we say yes to one person for something that's outside of our regulations, and then the floodgates are open. It's a precedent.
And there are reasons why the seasonal testing is adhered to. It works better. It was found over time that works better for all involved.
So it sounds like at least within the board, we've got some consensus. Brad, I sort of see you on there. If you have any other comment you'd like to add, I want to make sure you feel free to do so. But otherwise, it sounds like we're kind of close to being able to give more guidance.
I guess I have one question. So Mark, what I need the soil testing for is, so are you saying that under what we discussed before, you've already considered that I'm granted this additional bedroom and that the soil testing is needed to be able to get one over and above that?
I believe, and I'd have to go back to the minutes, the board, when you were with us, what, about half a year ago, maybe? The board decided to consider the proposal as an additional bedroom. So in that case, you would have to decide if, well, not decide, but either determine if the septic system needs to be added on or a whole new septic system needs to be put in place. So that's where we are at this present time.
And just to reference those minutes, which I think I did attach.
You did.
Yeah, I have them.
Doing the soil testing doesn't guarantee you'd be allowed to do it. It would be as long as no variances were needed.
Okay, so variances are definitely needed. We did some off books testing, and I don't know precisely from the engineer, but we would definitely need variances. So I guess I just need to know what I can do under the current circumstances, because my wonderful parents, who my dad has donated my husband a kidney. He sat with my son for 30 hours for 6 months last year, 8 months last year on Zoom school, my ADHD lunatic son. And I had invited them here, promising them a place to live, and now have let them live in my basement for over 2 years. And I blew it last year and missed the deadline. And so I hired this engineer, and I didn't know that we could submit the application before November 1st. I was told I couldn't. So I was, telling this guy, like, I want to get this thing in November 1st. He was like, no, they won't accept it until then. I would have had it in and, let him convince me to do the off books testing, which set us back. And this is I just need to know what roof I can put over my parents' head.
Yeah. So what I would say is, again, sort of not seeing your off-books testing, I kind of won't comment on that. I think that if you are doing things that are new construction and you are not replacing the overall septic system, the Board of Health doesn't grant variances because it, again, similar to the out-of-season testing, fundamentally undermines the ability to kind of enforce the regulations. Mm-hmm. So what I would suggest as the next step is to just review with Mark to determine whether or not what you are pursuing is new construction. If it is, then the soil testing isn't the problem. It's the fact that you will require variances that will make that impossible regardless of the results of the soil testing. The +1 that we were talking about is when systems have been in failure and there's a replacement. So I think looking at yours, it looks like your system from those minutes of December 2020 was replaced in 1998. with state waivers required and IA technology utilized. So again, so the system cannot be expanded and no new design flow is allowed. So again, like I think that you may be constrained in terms of if what you're doing is net adding flow, which means adding bedrooms, from at least what was described in 98 and from what your sort of informal testing has revealed now, suggests that this will not be buildable with the facts for the property. And so then the solution would need to be, how do I turn something else in the home so that it is no longer a bedroom to allow me the ability to make a bedroom structurally somewhere else?
Right. I mean, you know, under the plan as I proposed it, we were already doing that. So I bought a 5-bedroom home with a 5-bedroom septic, always planning to combine a bedroom.
And in the minutes, I can send you tomorrow or even tonight, the December 2nd, 2020 minutes, but it did say on that December 2nd, the board discussed with you that one option was to change the second floor of the house to have only 4 bedrooms and design an accessory apartment as a 2-room studio and provide a deed recording for the 2 existing basement rooms. So that was what was discussed back then as an option.
Okay, and so to move forward with that, I wouldn't need soil testing?
You wouldn't, because that in that case, you're not, the soil testing is if you need to change the design of your existing septic system or to build a new septic system. If you're building a new supplementary septic system and it requires variances, it doesn't help you for the goal you've described. So my suggestion, again, this is, again, like kind of hearing how difficult it's been. And so I don't know that this is official Board of Health advice, but I think it's to say, from everything you've described, it's very hard for me to see a septic system based solution to the challenge. And I think this is probably a building plan based solution. And then you don't need soil testing because you don't need to modify your septic system to be compliant with the regulations. And so then the fact that you would need variances is rendered moot, but that way that's something you can explore and pursue now. So you're not waiting till November to then say like, oh my gosh, I waited 7 months, you know, and then this happened. And like, if they only would have told me that this was a road to nowhere, I could have done something different and made some forward progress. So that would be my recommendation based on what you've described.
And I would suggest that you have, you know, whoever might be drawing up plans for you, work with our agent just to keep an eye on how we do bedroom counts, which influences septic sizing, and make sure that whatever plans you have are not then bumping up into a challenge as well. So, and he can guide you on that, and you could come back to the board to discuss those plans if needed as well.
So it was actually quite difficult to find an engineer that was willing to work in Sherborn. It seems like though that the Dan McIntyre, he seemed to be able to like, are there other people who?
So what I would say is we cannot recommend sort of individual contractors to work with. Again, what I would flag is like, if the septic system is unlikely to be your solution, then a septic system engineer is unlikely to be your next best step. I think it would really be to kind of go and to say, you know, to check in with Mark kind of at an early stage to say, this is what we're thinking about. Does this align with how you typically do it? And then would be to work with an architect to kind of say, great, here are the plans. And so if that's something Mark can approve because it's very straightforward, it's like, yep, I can approve this building permit. In the subset that he has a question or that he needs more guidance from us since he's acting as our agent, that then comes back to a full board. But again, because that's not a variance hearing, it doesn't have notifications or any of the other stuff to abutters. So it may be a much quicker timeline. It's just more disruption in the home for, you know, kind of taking out walls and those pieces, but may otherwise be much quicker than even a septic system solution, which seems unlikely here would be.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we always knew that there was going to be disruption in the home itself, so that's not okay. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just checked. I don't still have the files from December way back then.
I do. I saved it.
To look at that and talk about what options are, which again, Mark can do with you,
I-
or we could do it another time.
I
where
think
we
it's
could
actually
say,
pretty,
here's what you could do, what changes we would see is fitting into your current septic system, yes or no.
and Joe, I
As
think,
Matt's suggesting, which is look at how the house is laid out versus adding on in the same way.
and Joe, I think we got pretty granular in looking at the December minutes. I suspect that just circling back to those and checking with Mark would be a great next step that is probably faster than the timeline you'd otherwise be faced with.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I had understood that for any of those solutions that we needed to get soil testing for you, but it's good to know that there's something that doesn't, it sounds like even the soil testing is not a viable option, so.
I think the soil testing is, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the soil testing is only relevant if there are changes to the septic system, which is only relevant if there are changes to the design flow or the bedroom count. And so if you're not changing that, then it renders that whole arm moot.
That's correct. And we have some real good flow sheet within our building application process. It's in our regulation, actually, under our building procedures at the end of our regulations. It's a good flow chart to follow. There may be other things that it's our opportunities if you're planning to keep the bedroom count the same.
Okay. If a question about deed restrictions, just kind of as an urban planner, I don't love that option just because it's not very flexible for like in the future, if there's changes in technology or changes in land use in this area, and then this house would need to be different or something like, you know, in 40 years or whatever, 50 years, then there would be this restriction on the basement. Would that apply just to this home is constructed or any basement on this property?
It's typically if you don't want them to be counted towards the room count. So like if you don't want a deed restriction, we're totally happy to not deed restrict, but then on the room count, and most people would much rather have a non-subterranean room to use towards their room count.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I understand your question because I put these on for environmental reasons all the time. So it runs with the title, you know, of the land, and so you can terminate. Like, so if someone were to come in and knock the house down and put in a new house, there could be the situation where the deed recording might be able to be terminated, and either depending on what's done, maybe they wouldn't need one depending on what they did. So it's not that it has to last forever. It has to last for as long as the conditions remain as they are, and someone with legal counsel and, you know, in conversations with town boards, et cetera, might be able to change things down the road in the future and potentially terminate it, but it would have to be in compliance with whatever regulations are in existence at that point in time.
Sure.
So,
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I do. My husband's a lawyer, and I asked him about it, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, those things are permanent forever." And I'm like, "Well, that doesn't make sense."
Yeah,
So
no, I mean, that's a common misperception, I think.
Yeah,
But
he's not a land use lawyer. He's an intellectual property lawyer, so
Yeah.
totally different thing. But yeah.
yeah.
So super. All right. Well, I appreciate all your information. I think I know what I need to do now. So thanks so much for hearing me out and having me here tonight. So
Yeah, sorry about your situation.
Have a good night, Brett.
Awesome.
And good luck.
Did the board vote on the request though? Just to have it on the record?
Okay, so do we have a motion? Do we want to make this?
An
we want to
affirmative
s-
motion.
Yeah, so
Do we want to have a motion to extend the soil testing dates to allow the soil testing application for 58 Oldfield Drive?
Do I have, so moved? Is that right?
Yeah.
I was,
and I'll second.
okay. And
Any
then
other
we-
comments?
Okay.
Okay, so then an I vote would be to allow out of season, and a nay would be to not. All right, Matt?
Matt Beavers, nay.
Lisa, nay.
Rebecca Honeywell, nay.
Matt Vitale, nay.
And Daryl, nay.
All right.
All
Do
right.
we want to,
Yes, let's go to Nason Hill, I believe, right, Mark?
Yes.
I don't think I have a document for that. I don't recall one.
I think
So-
we have it in the minutes from 4/6.
I
'Cause it was just on us.
submitted new plans to Chris on the April 28th. Did he not send them on?
The plans have been updated to fit the guidelines that you guys had suggested the last time we met with you.
Ellen, do you know if we received those? I don't see those in the materials, but it's also possible I'm missing them.
Yeah, I
It was
didn't-
on a building application. It was just updated, I believe, this week. Ellen, do you know offhand if you got there was a chance to upload it into our docs?
If there wasn't, would it be permissible for the applicant to just share a screen so we can at least kind of look and talk through it, maybe make some forward progress?
Yeah, are you able to do that?
I am, yes. Can you make me a presenter?
Yes, I can. Let me just stop sharing and then you should be able to do it. Okay.
All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay.
So last time we submitted 3 plans. We were advised to come down to 1. The changes that were made in this design is we walled off this section of the house to make it a non-livable space. We also made sure the staircase was a banister to clear up any clarification about this being a hallway versus a room. So now this is just one open room that does not have access to the 2nd floor.
Perfect. David, so what I'm showing up here, just as we kind of go through, is this the full, I think this aligns and it matches my memory. I think it's most helpful for us if we can just kind of see the whole floor plan to be able to say room. I think.
Yeah, I have that pulled up, another document. I have the original floor plan. I do not have like united the 2 houses. So I'll share that really quickly. This was the old floor plan. The old house is right with our current, what's remaining is this part of the house.
Okay.
And then this section is what's in the new floor plan.
I am seeing the same floor plan.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything what you're talking about.
That's because, I went technical and shared a document and not, 1 second, I'm gonna share my screen. I do this for a living, and then when I have to do it in non-living space, I change my world. How about now?
Okay.
Perfect.
So this is the legacy floor plan, 1st floor, 2nd floor, and then let me know when you want me to jump to the proposed new replacement of the wing.
And so the replacement is replacing the bottom left appendage. Am I seeing that right? It's that 2nd floor portion.
And 1st floor.
And 1st floor.
Okay. All right, so if we sort of look at the existing room count for the kind of square house on the right portion, and I sort of invite others, if you have a different number than me, I see 3 rooms on the 1st floor. I see 4 rooms on the 2nd floor.
I see 4 rooms on the 1st floor.
Yeah, how do you see
There-
3 rooms on the 1st floor?
I was just talking about the square portion because if we're
okay.
Oh, okay.
So do I have that right, David? There's sort of that box.
Correct.
That
There's
is
the living
part-
room, the dining room, and the library. Yep.
Okay, so that's
Perfect.
3. Yeah, that
So
makes
that we've got 3 there. We've got 4 on the 2nd floor. So we've got a 7-room total, 4 bedrooms. Does that line up with how other people are doing the count for that portion of
Okay.
that plan?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And David, do you want to move us to the
Yep.
next portion?
Here's the new proposed 2nd floor wing.
Okay, and so I see a 5th bedroom there. I don't see any additional bedrooms. And I think the bonus room is similar to the craft room that we looked at for the Bullard Street property probably 1.5 years ago now, where it is a 2nd floor space accessible only via the garage.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
And David, is that
And do you
accurate?
have the
garage-
1st floor below this
Yep.
new?
Yeah, we
It's
still have to count that, Matt.
it's right here.
Perfect.
Okay.
And so we've got kitchen. So I end up with a 9-room room count and 5 bedrooms. Is that what other folks are?
Yes.
And I believe our septic is an 11 room. So this should be all within code.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so
are
our
we counting the bonus
10
room as a
room.
room? Wait,
I think it should count as a room, not as a bedroom. So I
so I
think
think
we
that's
should-
10.
So
Yeah.
it's 10 rooms. So even if we
5
did divide by 2, it's 5, and which is what it is anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's 5 bedrooms either way is what we're saying. And it's So it's a, how big is the septic?
5-bedroom.
The 5-bedroom septic.
Perfect.
And what's going on in the basement?
It's an unfinished
Nothing.
basement, nothing.
We
Okay.
love that about your basement.
I don't, it floods. That's why it's unfinished forever.
Perfect. I would say this works for me. Does this work?
Yep,
Like this feels quite consistent.
it's consistent with other properties in town and what they've done
And
for
so
rooms over a garage in particular. I mean, this one's a little different because it's still pretty integrated into the house, but the way you've walled it off makes it meet our requirements.
And so for this one, do we, in terms of, Mark, what do we sort of need to approve for you? Do we need to approve a building plan conditional to the plan being received aligning with the composite plan we've discussed tonight?
And just so you know, for the future, if there a bathroom ever goes in that bonus room or the hall is broken through and it's connected, it's going to turn into a bedroom under either of those circumstances.
Understood.
Yes, and to answer your question, Matt, as long as they stay within the bedroom count and that room's not considered a bedroom, then that would work. They do need to, be careful on their room count if they're planning any basement rooms and so forth or additional rooms, but this would be suitable if they decide on going this route.
And so Mark, would we then vote on recommending approval of this plan? And then you will just reconcile what's been discussed tonight with the plan that it sounds like went to Chris, but we just don't see in our uploaded material. So we're having the composite discussion. Does that seem like a reasonable next step? And Alan, how does that work?
Once the board makes a decision, then we can move forward and process what we need to process on the actual building application. We have a section in there that we can process, so
Yeah.
that definitely can be done.
Yeah, you can make a motion to authorize Mark to approve the building application as long as the plans show what you've discussed.
Perfect. So do I have a motion to, wait, what am I supposed to do, Alan?
To do what Ellen said.
Motion to authorize the agent
Perfect.
to approve.
A life mantra, really.
Perfect. 100%. Do I have a motion to authorize Mark to approve the plans as described, conditional to the room count and layout of the submitted plans aligning with the plans as discussed this evening?
So moved.
So moved. Second. Any other comments?
Just that room shows no plumbing, so the bonus room, you're not planning any
Mhm.
bathrooms or anything?
No
I'm not.
plumbing and no connection to the rest of the
Main
second
house,
floor.
yeah. Mhm.
Correct.
Good. And
Okay, ready to vote? Matt,
Matt Beaver's eye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, aye. Okay,
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Have a good night, guys.
Right.
All right,
We're at
I think we're
8:34.
up to,
I think we've got 2 agenda items
yep,
left.
the
I think
open meeting law. And so Rebecca, first I'm going to ask you, Ellen did send a request for more specificity because ironically, per open meeting law, one needs to have a more detailed description. So depending on what it is you want to talk about, the open meeting law, we'll determine whether we can actually do that tonight. If it's just an administrative question, I think we could, but if it's something more substantive, we're going to have to put it on the next agenda because the definition, what you indicated here wasn't enough. And I don't know if you didn't have time to respond to Ellen's follow-up request for more specificity. So if you could just describe to us what you wanted to.
So as you recall, on the March 16th meeting, I gave a presentation to the Board of Health of the citizens petition, which was the Article 23 at the town meeting. And the minutes came out and were voted on at the April 6th meeting. At that meeting, the Board of Health voted to not accept my corrections to the minutes. However, in the recording of the meeting and also in the transcript of the meeting, the corrections, and there were actually 12, were documented in the public record. And so I consulted with the Attorney General's office to find out what their rules are. And it's true that the meeting's minutes do not have to contain everything verbatim from a meeting. But what is also true is the material that's in the minutes needs to be factually accurate. And so I am requesting that the board reconsider accepting my proposed corrections to the minutes because they're not factually accurate. And there were more than 2. Matt had suggested that perhaps the 2 examples that I gave be written on the record for the April 6th meeting, but actually by the open meeting law, it specifically states that the corrections need to be made on the minutes themselves of the meeting. And so it would be a violation of the open meeting law if the Board of Health doesn't correct the minutes.
All right, well, let me say
Wait,
then
Daryl,
that is,
Daryl, can I just make a comment first, Daryl?
I guess so.
Well, I mean, what I just say is like, we discussed this for, I think, almost half an hour last time. And I think that, the principle I remember discussing was that we don't have public comment on how people think the minutes should be. And that the provision of those comments is a slippery slope. And I think just as Rebecca wearing community member hat may have comments, there may be lots and lots of people who would like to edit the minutes, which are not intended to be a verbatim summary. So I would favor our discussion being pretty limited in scope tonight, given the extent that we discussed it before. And so I just wanted to kind of flag that. And then Daryl, I'll pass the baton back to you.
I was going to say, if we are going to consider discussing this at all, it can't be tonight. One, that's a big question that you're asking. We have addressed it mostly, and I'll say that I did go through comments that you had submitted that were lengthier, and I carefully went through the recording and compared your more extensive comments to it and didn't feel that there was significant variation. So, and again, not every single thing you said was in the minutes, but there was a lot of stuff, and that's not necessary for minutes. So
I would just also add, like,
I just don't think we can do it tonight.
I think we can't do it tonight. And I also, if we wouldn't be ready to do it for everyone, which I think we definitively wouldn't, then I don't think we can do it for Rebecca in a community role. Like, that's different than if you're saying,
except we're talking about accuracy, and it's clearly, the corrections are clearly in the transcript and the recording, and there are errors. And the errors.
I think the point, Rebecca, but I think the point is we all felt that the minutes accurately reflected the meeting.
But did you listen to did you read the?
I did actually. I did read your comments and went back through, and I felt that they accurately reflected
I really don't want to submit a
Rebecca, you should 100% submit whatever you think is appropriate. And I don't think any of us would discourage you from doing that. For me, I actually feel really strongly about the principle of, I think that you're asking for a level of voice and agency here that is not typical for the level of community input we have in the minutes. And so I think that if we grant that to you, it also suggests a conflict with your role on the board and your sort of action there and the request you're making. So I recognize that you disagree. I recognize that you think they're inaccurate. In this case, you are a community participant. The board did its normal process of reviewing with, it sounds like, sort of added review, because I certainly don't typically go back to the video to look and to cross corroborate things. And it followed its process, and the vote was not to do it. So if you feel like the best next step for you is to take it to the Attorney General, you're certainly welcome to do that in your capacity as a citizen. And if you feel like that's the right thing to do, you should absolutely do it. But I don't think it's appropriate in your role on the board to be advocating for this as an agenda topic, as a citizen's petitioner. Like, again, if you're coming here as a member of the board to say I'm adding to the agenda, that needed to be done differently than if you're Rebecca Honeywell raising a concern as a citizen's petition. So I think even the way that this was added to the agenda is inconsistent with the guidance from the town clerk about how your roles needed to be separated.
Right, but regardless, the material, it's the responsibility of the Board of Health and whoever takes the minutes that the minutes are accurate. And there were substantive errors, multiple, 12
right.
actually, and that's not.
Okay,
accurate.
you've already
No.
mentioned that, so.
And we've all said that we
need to
don't, we
move on.
disagree, and we are acting as the board in this capacity, and you're acting as a member of the public. And so I think if he seems that the next step you want to take here is to file the complaint, and I think that's completely a reasonable thing to do, and we get outside review of this.
Okay.
Okay, so Carol?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I know that there was a comment that about the agenda item. And I would just say, certainly on Conservation Commission, we don't have details about the agenda item frequently. So I would think that that would be fine to make it possible to comment about it. I guess the other thing I would say is I understand that there's some fine points here about at what point Rebecca is speaking as a board member, at what point is she speaking as a citizen. I understand that. I would think overall, or hope overall, that all of our boards, if we knew that something was inaccurate in our minutes, that we would go back and correct it, because that is a requirement to be as accurate as possible, no matter who would tell us about it or remind us about it.
And we did check. You heard Matt and I went back to the recording and to the comments that had been submitted.
I guess I would say to that, Daryl, though, if somebody is actually, if Rebecca in her role as a member of the public who came before the board has then subsequently or is about to submit to you the inaccuracies related to the transcript, it's the obligation of the board to make their minutes accurate, even if that means just deleting those comments, whatever it might be.
We did that. Rebecca submitted her comments. We went back and looked. The minutes were not a verbatim record of her comments, but we felt that the minutes reflected the conversation. So Rebecca submitted comments. We went back and reviewed, and which is a sort of above and beyond what we would normally do if a citizen submitted comments. And so we do believe that the minutes accurately reflect the meeting. Rebecca disagrees with us on that point, as she's entitled to. But I think that, you know, Rebecca can't use her position on the board to then edit the minutes in a way a normal citizen couldn't.
And I think that's the other point is like, there actually shouldn't be any gray area about what Rebecca's role is. So in this case, it wouldn't have been permissible for another community member to say, I would like to add this to the agenda without telling Ellen what it is. And I would discourage the Conservation Commission from an open meeting standpoint, having had discussions with council about this. I would certainly recommend having appropriate specificity so a member of the public can clearly see what you're talking about. Again, I would say
giving you follow-up from the AG. I thought you'd be interested.
No, but again, like I think like Ellen, you were asked for follow-up and didn't share it, and that's again totally fine. From my standpoint, the purpose of the open meeting law is to make sure that an interested party can look at the agenda to be able to expect what's to be discussed. Again, I would say we don't have community members who are independently adding items to the agenda. So even the active adding to the agenda is you acting in your capacity as a member of the board. And so again, that's a conflict. So I totally recognize you don't think they're accurate, and that's fine. I think that the feeling of the board is that they are, and that's fine too. And we certainly are under no obligation to say we need to change the minutes to reflect the opinion of another party. There are minutes and we should process them as we always do, and not adjusting them to the position of the proponent doesn't mean that we failed to make them accurate. I think the intent of that. But again, if you want the Attorney General to review it, so it goes.
Yes. Courtney?
I just want to make clear that Carol is not speaking as a member of Conservation Commission. Carol, I think you need to make that clear, because
thank you.
Talking about what we do as a Conservation Commission, you know, you may fall into that same trap of not having your role be clear. So I would urge caution.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Courtney. You're right. I was not speaking on behalf of Conservation Commission. I was only observing. So thank you for that clarification.
Perfect. So it doesn't sound like there's any further determination needed by the board. Do we want to then pivot?
No, especially since I think we went into more detail than maybe would have we would have done otherwise tonight.
Perfect. Do we want to then just, I think our last agenda item,
We have two, we have three: minutes, next agenda items, and regulation review tasks. If we want to do that tonight, although I'll note that I still
No,
need to rewrite
oh,
a
no.
letter by 9
No,
o'clock.
I think what I would just say is I did a preliminary breakdown that was a late addition. So I just wanted to get buy-in for the distribution of tasks. We had a total of 4 sets of tasks that had people expressing interest in. What I proposed is that ledge disruption should be Rebecca. Administrative updates will be the Matts. Planning board engagement will be Daryl and Matt B. Well installation will be Daryl and Matt V. And well potability will be back burner since nobody had expressed an interest. The rationale for this is that everybody gets half a task. I think Rebecca had as her highest one was ledge disruption, which was otherwise not a source of kind of high priority. So that was sort of my logic for those breakdowns. I was hoping to just get sign off on that to say, yep. And then those folks can then take those topics on to plan to bring back to subsequent meetings.
Yeah, and I can't remember, Matt, for the well potability, like at some point I said I would help with updating in terms of our sort of drinking water quality objectives.
Yeah,
So I don't, is that part of this? I just
I think
couldn't
I think that's what I meant by well potability, but that's what
Okay.
happens when an internal medicine doctor writes it, is I was like, you can drink it. So I think that was my intent of what to capture here. So if we wanted sort of the drinking water quality regulation, are you okay?
Yeah, that's, I think that's something that we have said we wanted to revisit.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to look at that with someone, but given my workload, I definitely couldn't take that just on my own, so.
I would also say, I think that this is a very aggressive set of pieces and it is fine. Like the well potability honestly feels like an important topic, but
Yeah.
has the least urgency. And so what I might recommend is that we put that on the back burner now
Okay,
and just focus
fine.
on these other 4. And I think that your general PFAS engagement, I think, is also a source of value. So I don't want it to
Yeah.
look like
Okay.
that is a ton of work that I have certainly had nothing to do with.
Okay, okay,
So I don't
yeah,
want it
no,
to-
I got plenty to do. I got plenty
Yeah.
to do. Okay.
Does this breakdown otherwise sound okay to folks?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
Rebecca, does that sound okay for you with the ledge disruption front?
That sounds good.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so now we have, sorry, back to minutes for approval. Do we have a motion to approve the April 6th minutes as amended?
So moved.
I have some amendments to make that, once again, I need to listen to the recording.
Okay.
Can you do that soon?
Because we'll be in violation of open meeting law if we
Yes.
can't vote on it.
Yes, I can do it tomorrow morning.
I guess the problem, Rebecca, is that because it's been a month since that meeting, if we don't vote on it again for 2 weeks, there's a risk that we'll be in violation of the open meeting law because you didn't provide your edits before this point.
Well, I can do it tonight.
But again, like I think that's still the challenge is if we can't. So if you say that you think these are minor kind of grammatical edits, I think that's certainly fine. If you think these are substantive edits, then again, I don't think we're in a position to
So
vote them.
far, you've questioned the integrity of my corrections before, so maybe you won't authorize them. I mean, that would be.
But I would just,
This is why it would have been nice to have them before the meeting.
yeah, like I reviewed it and had no substantive edits.
Yeah, and I reviewed it and it had no edits at all.
Me neither.
And so, Rebecca, if you feel like you've got things that you need to offer, I think we're not in a position to vote on it, but it does risk that we'll be in violation of the open meeting law.
Okay, well, I mean, I do have some errors that I'd like to correct that were quotes of statements that I made.
Do you
and
think
this would not be the first time?
I know, but
Do you
so
think there's
we need to
substantive edits?
figure out something though we need to figure out what to do now. But, we all feel squeezed to review minutes and get them done by the next meeting. So that's the
Right,
goal.
but when did they come out for us to review?
I think several weeks ago.
Last week.
Yeah. And so I would
So
say,
I mean, Ellen, I've sent in a couple edits at the last minute before, and I didn't think you had any objections.
Well, no, but that, if you say these are not substantive edits, then I think there's no objection now. If you're saying these
I
are
don't think they're
substantive edits,
substantive edits. But
perfect. Then I think we can say they're not substantive, and then Ellen, if there's any concerns about that, then we can bring it back as an agenda item for the next meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yes, but I don't need to accept the, any edits that are provided to me. The minutes are what I write as what I hear at the meeting. They're not
It's
verbatim,
not a transcript.
and it is not a transcript. And if I don't believe the edit is needed, I don't have to accept them.
Perfect.
Right.
So
In fact, when I email Ellen with mine, I always say they're just suggested.
yeah. So what I might suggest is, Rebecca, if you feel like they're not substantive edits, I think I would be comfortable voting on the minutes as a board. And then if there's concerns when Ellen receives them, we can bring them back and have a follow-up conversation. Does that sound reasonable to
that
folks in
sounds
terms?
very reasonable. Thank you.
And I guess, Ellen, my recollection is that, you know, we typically have at least a week ahead of time to do it. You know, what's the timeline that we would need to get minutes to you, like edits to you by, for you to be able to either share those or raise those? Or is it something we can do? So I don't remember getting written versions of edits to the minutes. I think it's really just to be able to prepare this.
Right.
Hey,
Yeah, I've typically received, if I receive the edits in a timely manner, then I can incorporate them into the minutes so that I have a final draft at the meeting when you're voting. And I don't share all the edits with you because they aren't substantive. If they're substantive, I should share them with you because either that or I just
or update the minutes. I mean, like, because ideally we'd say we have provided, like, I certainly have had minutes that I felt like were substantive changes that I sent to you, but then we had updated minutes because it was sort of in advance of the meeting and it was able to be updated.
Right.
And so that might be the best practice for all of us on the board, is to say, you know, to try to take a look at these as quickly as possible after they're provided, so that Ellen can update the minutes if there is a substantive change, so that can then be circulated and brought to the board. I think the vast majority of these are sort of, you know, kind of minor adjustments or an occasional typographical error, not, you know, kind of changes in policy or key elements that are missing.
And I mean, the town clerk told me after the last meeting that any edits provided should only be typographical. She was very, I would.
Because these are your notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Oh, okay.
So perfect. So do we have a, oh, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
would, maybe Rebecca should check with her and see what she says about.
Okay, that sounds like a great next step too. Do we have a motion to approve the April 6 minutes?
So moved,
Second.
as amended. If amended. Any other comments? Otherwise, Matt?
Matt Beavers, aye.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca Honeywell. Hi.
Vitaly, aye.
And Daryl, aye. All right, so we just have agenda items for next meeting, but
Do we want to? My only question is, do we need to have beaver management as a discussion there, or should that be at a future date?
that has been such a complex topic for years that, and I really don't think it should be that hard to implement.
Perfect. So
having participated in implementation myself, I think it just takes actually doing it.
All right, so let's hold off on doing that. Ellen, can I ask you to give a brief refresher on the bylaw revision or the regulation revision process as an agenda item for next meeting? Just to
Say
kind
that
of
again?
like as we're sort of changing,
Regular-
working on the regulation updates to just refresh our memory about what that process entails.
Okay, yeah.
That's it for me.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, Matt,
Happy Versailles.
Lisa, I.
Rebecca, Hummel, aye.
Matt Vitale, aye.
and Daryl, I. Thanks, everyone.
Good
Have
night,
a good night,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.
Good night, thank you.